Well, today is the 23rd of October over here where I am in Singapore, which means it's still the 22nd of October where you are, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm Ron Kaufman, and please tell our viewing audience who you three are.
I'm Dan Mangone.
June Mangone.
Danelle Coyle.
Boy, that was like the shortest impossible introduction you could do. So let's
Should we
try
do
this
that
again.
again?
Let's try this again. I'll go first. Hi, I'm Ron Kaufman, and many years ago, I founded a club that became a company called Disc Covering the World. And in those youthful years, had just an absolute ball going to tournaments and creating festivals and going overseas and international tours. And of course, we all needed good flying plastic, and there wasn't a lot of it available all over the world. So discovering the world and my life flourished. That's my introduction. Let me pass over to my friend Dan Mangone.
Well, I got a call from Mr. Ron Kaufman, and he said he was going to sell me his business, and I told him he was crazy, but he convinced me, and here we are after convincing my wife to take our investment for a house and dump it into this company.
Is that how it felt at the time, June? Like dump
it did. It did, because disc play was still fairly new, and to invest so much into an unknown, it was like, what are we doing? You're already working in the disc business. You want to do more in the disc business? So,
and we just found out that she was pregnant.
I just found out I was pregnant with Dannelle. So yeah.
Got it.
That's where we are. And then she's been around the business her whole life.
Do you now call her "and my pregnancy"? I mean, is there a person? Tell us, Dannelle.
Yeah, so I'm Danelle Coyle, and then I grew up all around the business, but went off and had kind of my own career for 12 years. And then in 2019 came back and took over leadership at the business.
Fantastic. You know, there's so many people who are going to watch this who not only remember Dan and June from way back at La Mirada or Orange, wherever they were, and will remember me and the fact that there's always been a good friendship there. But they're also going to remember you because we saw you in diapers, we saw you in strollers, we saw you on blankets, we saw you. Yeah, you didn't just grow up with discs all around you. You grew up in the disc world. Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Yep.
And way back in those early days, it was the days when flying discs, of course, everybody then just called them Frisbees, had clubs. Remember, there was like a La Mirada club. Weren't you guys called the Gophers or something?
No.
That was the Oak Grove Gophers. We were just La Mirada. Our ultimate team was called the Ethereal Wizards.
Okay, got it. And there were all kinds of other wizard groups, for example, in New York that focused on freestyle. And I had the global itch. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut. I went to Brown, but after 2 years there, I had to get out. So I went to Europe for 2 years and then came back. And you guys know my life has turned into 100 flights a year for the past 29 years. It's kind of wild. But way back then, I knew I wasn't going to be a Connecticut guy and it wasn't just going to stay put. So the idea of using discs to go all around the world naturally led to a company or an idea for a club called Disc Covering the World. Get it?
Yeah.
And everybody got it. So it started out as a club. It became this little mail order, not even a catalog. It was just a price list because I was the guy who would go to Europe. And when I went to Europe, I'd bring good American discs. But when I came back, there were all these crazy, lousy discs, but they were funky colors and they had foreign stamps on them. And there was a huge collector's urge going on at the time. And those little price lists ended up financing this ability for me to go all over the world. And, that's kind of how it grew. And I moved at one point to Davis, California, and the company continued to flourish. Once I hit California, from Connecticut or from Rhode Island, it was wow. And after quite a few years, it became a real business. So it was more about, stock keeping units and inventory control and cash flow. And I'm not just quite that kind of guy. I was more into how we're going to do the festival and who's going to sing and should we have more dogs or less dogs. I mean, it was all about getting people to participate and have fun and sell frisbees on the side because that's what enabled the whole thing. So when it reached that point, I realized, no, this has to go into more competent hands. This has to go into the hands of people who understand business. Actually, they had to already be in the business because flying disc at that time was just so unique. As you said, June, it's like, who's doing this? And that meant that there were exactly two possible candidates. And one of them was already a friend. And one of them was already on the West Coast with me. And so, Dan, you got the call. And thank you so much for answering the call. And, I've always wondered, what was it like in the background there? And when you first took on Discovering the World, remember, you came up and we loaded up the truck. And all that inventory and the computer and all the background paperwork, and you drove down. What in the world was that like when you showed up with what Discovering the World was and it landed in La Mirada where you are with your own operation already going?
It was crazy. We had to find a home for it. I remember flying up with Joe Kugel, and we loaded up that U-Haul truck and we hauled it down here. And I'm going, what are we getting ourselves into here? But it was a challenge, and it was business, and it was exciting at the time. The first years was kind of pressure because we had an incentive to pay it off before August. We bought it in April, and it took all our money to pay it off because the incentive we wanted, it saved us some money. And Danelle was born in September, and we were out of money. I had to bring her home on a credit card. So that was kind of the early years. And
The early years were tight financially.
Tell us
Getting
more,
it.
June.
Mhm.
Tell us more.
Yeah, it was tight, had a new child, new business, getting it running. I was working at the hospital, but I went to part-time after she was born. So I had less money coming in. So it just made it a little hard at first. And then once it got rolling, there was no stopping it. So
Tell us a
were
little bit
running
about
two-
that part. When you say once it got rolling, because the fans and customers and friends of yours all over Southern California, were they excited for you? Did they come in? Did they start buying? The customers that I already had all around the country and the world, were they giving you the thumbs up? What was that like?
yes, your database of customers was already well established. We did a different type of catalog. Yours was more like a newspaper. We went to a booklet. And
that was a challenge.
and you got to think, this was before computers. It was all going to a typesetter and having, now they just go to the computer and do something, and it's, done very easily.
You go to the web and it immediately gets up on the web instead of printing a catalog.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when the way you got a bold font was you went back, you kind of moved back and you typed over the same word again a second time, and that made it a little darker.
Yeah. But no, we already had a good community down here. It was just, we were expanding it, and it just took a little while to expand. There was other courses. We were, when we first had Discovering the World, we were still up at La Mirada also.
We had two businesses.
So we were running two businesses.
One at the golf course.
And one brick and mortar where we shipped from.
Right.
So at the course, we were selling discs and candy and snacks. And at the shop,
and running tournaments.
Right.
Yeah.
And then at the brick and mortar, we were also selling, we had a storefront, but also shipping.
Yeah.
Invoicing. So
one of the early decisions I made when the inventory up in Davis, California was far more than I could ever put in the house was we took the garage and then the courtyard and covered the courtyard and filled it up with metal racks. So that and I remember coming and visiting you in La Mirada. And I think one of the decisions I made at the time was buy sturdy racks.
Yeah.
I remember coming in to see your warehouse and going, there they are.
Yeah. We still have some of the original racks that we purchased when we first started the business. So I think we started off with maybe 8 racks, and I don't know, what do we have? I don't even know how many we have in the
She
back
doesn't know.
now.
She's counting how many forklifts you have. Right?
Yeah.
Dannelle, what's like one of your earliest memories of, oh, mom and dad have this Frisbee business?
I mean, as a young kid, I remember mostly, I mean, I spent a lot of hours at the business, and I was
Homework
just,
on the counter.
yeah, I thought I was bored most of the time, to be honest. And when they would give me like jobs to do, I was like cleaning the counters and sweeping the floor and just doing, the most monotonous tasks. So yeah, as a young kid, I kind of remember just being somewhere that, and then we would, yeah, go to tournaments, and they'd be like outside all day, no matter whether it's raining or hot out. So I'd say maybe I wasn't the biggest fan. And then also, growing up, it's always interesting, like, oh, what do your parents do? It's like, oh, my parents, yeah, sell Frisbees.
How did you answer that?
I mean, I just tell them my parents sell Frisbees, and people, adults, other children are just like, what is that? Which I still get to this day. But
No, but
so,
now
yeah.
it's now you meet people and say, what do you do? And say, I sell Frisbee. What?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they still do that. You can make a living at that.
We
Yeah.
tried.
Well, that's always the case in a retail business. You got to keep the stock, et cetera. But there's some real epic milestones. I recall when Dan and June Mangone had a hot stamping machine. And to be able to go from you got to order it from somewhere to have the responsibility of actually taking the artwork, turning it into the die, getting the right hot stamp colors, being the ones that go. And I remember Dan showing me in Discovering the World, after you'd set it up in California, how he hot stamped a disc. And he would take a disc and go, see this? It's just a piece of plastic. Then he put it on there. He goes, see this? Now this is a valuable piece of plastic. He literally knew, that each time it came out, and they didn't all come out right. You got all your misprints, which were also still useful as discs. And I could see that smile on his face, like adding value. And then there was another milestone when you folks started molding discs. I mean, that, who else in the country was making their own discs at that time? Maybe Westerfield, Solinsky, there was a little Kenner going on. Talk about that.
Well, we've never actually molded the discs ourselves. We've always had a vendor do it for us. And Whammo in the old days, they never molded their own discs. They always had molders make their discs, and they would come into the warehouse, and then they would decorate them. And that's kind of the way we went. The Whammo rationale was they'd rather have other people invest in those $100,000 mold machines than have them do that, and they spent their resources marketing and whatever. The other guys like Tim and the guys at Innova and Discraft, they went the other way. They invested in mold machines and made their own discs and did their own decorating. So, I don't know what would have been better or worse. We're happy the way we went, and it was exciting. The main thing that changed our business quite a bit and made us more diversified was when Whammo was deciding to bring their production to Mexico. And their custom imprinting business would have been difficult to do in Mexico because you had to have a assortment of colors on the inventory, and then you had to decorate them, then ship them across the border, and 200 unit orders, it's not worth it. And so they licensed us to do that work. And that's when our hot stamping came aboard. And yeah, it made us more diversified. And that's why we've been able to exist for so long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's a completely different business. It's like growing coffee beans or being Starbucks. And
Yeah.
both can make money, but out here your margin really can be incredibly flexible depending upon demand and design. And so when you started having the responsibility for doing hot stamping, it also meant that all the clubs, all the organizers of someone who needed 200 discs or 500 discs or had an advertising campaign and needed the fastbacks to be printed, they all came to you and joined
Not
your
all of them, but some of them.
Spoken like a businessman who knows his share of market. All right. So there's one question I've never really gotten the full answer for this. And here it is. It's being recorded for posterity. I called it disc covering the world. Everybody was like, yeah, I get it. You guys changed it to discovering the world, which in a sense for me wasn't bad because that's what I went off and did with the rest of my life. But what was the thinking there about changing the name of the company?
The way I remember that was that you wanted to do these tours to China was the first one, very successful, full page in Life magazine, have the picture in my office there or Dannelle's office. And you changed it to discovering the world because you were going down the tour angle of things and actually got the registered trademark discovering the world. And that's when we bought it, just as you did that.
Wow, well, thank you for clarifying my understanding of history. I've always thought like, I can't believe Mangones didn't get it.
Well,
No, we got it.
we appreciate the change. So
good. It's worked out for you really well.
It has, other than people thinking we're a travel agency. So, yeah.
Okay, well, people used to think I was a record store.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's also what discs were at the time. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are some milestones that are really the old ones we've talked about. When you purchased, came up with the truck. Remember the little blue trailer and getting that down to you as well? There was even that round inflatable ball with the sign that would hang down that said, come play. So you could have a festival somewhere and float it way above the park, probably be completely illegal today. And people would just be driving, oh, what's that? And you'd get more people to be able to come. And, you mentioned, Dan, about and run tournaments, because in those days, it was running the tournaments or running the festivals that got people together in volume. And of course, there'd be the music and there'd the things to drink and eat, but there'd also be whoever's selling the Frisbees. And that was where, early cash flow came from. And then things like you getting the license to do all the hot stamping for clubs and things for Whammo and others. What other milestones can you tell us about as the business grew?
Well, we've initially we had a building over on a major thoroughfare to the park, and we were busting out of that building, and so we got the building next door, and then we were busting out of that. Then we got the building 2 doors down. We busting out of that. We were looking for a building to expand in, and took us about 5 years to find this building, and people said, well, no one's gonna come over here, and we have a bigger retail area, and our sales went up. They have to go a half mile out of the way now, but moving here was a big move.
Was a wise decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And having Danelle come on was a wise move.
At what point did that happen, Dan? How old was Danelle?
2019, I had a brain tumor.
Yeah.
And I had surgery, and I was out of it for a while. And we didn't think it was affecting me any, but it was subtly. Like I wasn't doing some of my business reports that I should have been doing for like the last 3 quarters. We figured this out after surgery. And Danelle, we were thinking about retirement anyways at some point. And we'll go, oh, how is all this going to work out? And then this whole health issue came up, and you have to ask her why she came down here, but she knows she has good babysitters for our granddaughter, so that might have been one reason. But she came in and she took it over at that point, and then COVID hit, and that was a real challenging time. She made all those adjustments, filing for grants to keep us open. This whole retail area was empty and closed for like 2 months, and people who wanted this, we deliver it to them in the parking lot. It changed everything, and she managed all that. And then she's doing so much better than I would have done with dealing with that, and the technology of Instagram and all that goes with it.
Right.
She steps right into there and moves it to the next generation, which it probably needed to go. So
Yeah, we weren't
So-
super active on social media, and she's definitely
Look,
ramped
June,
that up.
let's face it, we're old codgers.
Yes,
Okay. I mean,
yes.
you know, we're like that era where we remember what
Yeah, yeah.
kids go, what's that? You know, is it a snake in the grass? Okay, so Dannelle, I mean, I remember you and I talking when Dad had his brain operation. You know, it was a
Yeah.
really obviously concerning time for everybody. And you were right on the cusp there of making the decision about whether to come in and run this thing or I'm just here to help.
Mhm.
And obviously you've jumped in. So tell us about that. I mean, was your little one with you then? Would your husband think about that? How's that flourishing?
Yeah, so I was working in the nonprofit world, and growing up around the business, I definitely, whether it's like, I don't know, in our blood or just being around it, I had like an entrepreneurial spirit, for
Mhm.
sure.
That's
And
for sure.
yeah, and so, but what, when I was, you know, going through college, I couldn't picture like selling things exactly. For some reason, I think I just wanted like a deeper purpose.
Mhm.
And I ended up in the nonprofit world and fundraising there because I felt like I was still selling something, but it was like a mission, a deeper mission. So I loved what I was doing. But part of the entrepreneurial spirit too, and something that I think maybe bothered me a little bit while I was a kid around the business, was just like how all consuming it is to be a business owner. We would always leave on vacations like late, like days late sometimes because things would come up, or, it's just like long hours and a lot of work. Well, then I kind of got into my own career, and I that's just how I was working for someone else too. So I think it is kind of just like part of that spirit. And so, I did not ever picture actually taking over the business. It wasn't like part of my plan. But when they're kind of feeling like they're at a crossroads of like, what does this look like next for us?
Yeah.
And I started really thinking about it. I just felt like I would regret it so much if
If
I
you let it
didn't.
go out of the hands of the family that
Yeah.
is in your blood. I mean,
Mhm.
like you said,
Yeah.
it's kind of just all around in your
And
veins.
like what I was doing and working in like my roles in the nonprofit world, like small
Yeah.
nonprofits are really similar to small businesses, like just kind of your job description being a little bit of everything. And so in a lot of ways, the transition, I think like it helped me, and actually where I was for many years before I left Santa Barbara was a nonprofit that helped
Got it.
women start and grow their own businesses. So I was around business owners, and
Right.
had been
Minority
around it.
owned or women run. I mean, you're really
Yeah.
looking to.
Mhm.
So let me ask you a question along that line. Your passion for social well-being. We talk
Mhm.
about it as nonprofit. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm giving a pro bono
Mhm.
talk this afternoon for a whole group of people from a nonprofit organization.
Mhm.
And tell us what, if at all, discovering the world as a business has been doing that is contributing to causes And if
Yeah.
if you dream that in the course of your life, because you're still very young, and the
Mhm.
decades ahead, that discovering the world continues to flourish. What kind
Mhm.
of things would you like to see the organization do as far as helpful funding?
Okay, well, yeah, a couple of things. One, I think instead of going the route of like sponsoring individuals or things like that, we've tried to invest more in supporting like infrastructure, whether like in maybe the disc golf world, like supporting access. So like tournaments and growth of courses and things like that. And then also just supporting some of the smaller niche sports that, there's just not a lot of places for them to get support from the niche flying disc sports. So I think that's where we try to like invest ourselves the most. And then also kind of tying into the greater good. I think I mentioned that I couldn't picture like, selling things. But then I think as I grew up and like I played ultimate in college and just seeing like the community that realizing the community I'd been around like my whole life and how special and amazing that is. And so like having a business like this is supporting, people becoming part of this like really amazing community. So I think for me now, that's where like a lot of the joy comes from, just seeing how much people enjoy flying, the variety of flying disc sports.
I mean, we have customers come in every day, whether they've been playing 20 years, 40 years, or just started 2 months ago.
Yeah.
The people that started 2 months ago are like, this sport is amazing. And
It is
they
amazing.
they get so excited, and it's fun to help them find the discs that they need to improve their game. And then when they come back in a month and say, your recommendations were spot on, this is what I'm doing now. Now, what do you think I should have? So it's just really fun.
So the other day, the Svenska Frisbeeförbundet, which is the Swedish Frisbee Association, that I had the joy of meeting when they were just getting started, they were having their 50th anniversary. And so I made a little video for them and they played it in their celebration. But I also went to their website and I saw for the first time they have with this big banner image, one of the ones that rotates across, and it's called Para Frisbee. And I'd never seen that before. And it's someone in a wheelchair, a young kid, learning how to throw. And there's an older guy sitting right next to him, also in a wheelchair, who obviously knows how, and they're working with each other. And oh my gosh, I mean, this kind of contribution to the well-being of humanity through plastic flying discs? Yes. Yes.
There's quite a strong deaf community that does their own tournaments and in our area that plays disc golf. So it's nice to see that they found a niche for themselves.
Yeah, another niche. They've got swimming, there's basketball, I mean, there's all kinds, but to see flying disc in that space, doesn't it just give you a really warm, heartfelt? So Dan, one of the things way back in our era, long before this became the size and scale and scope and diversity and international, and the competitive depth, that the sport has become, it was more of a game. It was more of there was a lot more of the fun, let's just go throw. Then as the sport, as multiple sports matured, so whether it was golf or ultimate or what are the other games, the mood changed a bit of the overall flying disc community worldwide. As you know, I interviewed Stork recently and I asked him that question and he said, yeah, I realized I was a major part of that, and a big part. And then he explained, which is that if the flying disc activities didn't go pro, didn't go in the direction of who's the best at this, with regulations and guidelines, et cetera, there was a commercial drive, which is you end up selling more of the device, but it also allows it to grow in a way that can follow the role models of all the other sports. It becomes a global phenomenon. But I want to dial Dan and June back to the early days when there was just this sense of really committed friendship with each other because we were all rogue. We were all not
Yeah.
doing basketball. We were all not playing baseball. We were putting our time into this other thing that was just evolving. And so I'm curious if you go back to that era and you think about it in the context of the tournaments you ran, the concession shop you had, the shop, and then as the catalog started to grow, what were the friendships like? What did the people that you knew from early? Yeah, that's the question I'm asking the two of you. We just
Well,
tell us about that.
I think disc sports early on, or frisbee play early on, was kind of countercultural. We were kind of the renegade. And then when you'd find other people enjoying that activity, it was like a family. And so it was the frisbee family. And as it evolved, and I was kind of part of the same thing Stork was, of these tournaments where you could get prize money for playing disc golf, and you would travel to qualify for the World Frisbee Championships. I mean, once you start down that line, it does change it a little bit. And it probably had to go that way, but going out and just playing catch with an old super pro is non-existent these days. And I think we lose a little bit because it's not there as much as it used to be.
But as for the friendships,
There's still
we
friendships.
still
I
know.
mean, all my closest friends I met playing ultimate frisbee 20 years ago.
Of course, Ultimate's
So-
unique in that rule 1 about the spirit of the game.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm not sure that quite holds the same way in Guts, or
True, but it's still, we're still friends and see people from 40 years ago.
And I
that-
imagine many more now, and maybe in a slightly different way. Like there was that, hey, let's go play the fun Orange Super Pro. And then there was that whole world of collecting, which was also really fun because anybody you were selling to or trading with or collecting or helping somebody complete a set or, or comparing and being jealous of or whatever, there was a real kinship there of
Mhm.
people who collect this stuff, whether it's beer cans or golf clubs or whatever. And we had that. Has that
It's still going on.
Is it? Yeah, it's still
Oh, yeah.
going on. I noticed it on Facebook. I got one of these who's selling that, and I'm like, why are these guys in their 70s still looking to collect that? But has the spirit of that evolved in any way, Dan, of that whole collectors community?
I think it's still very strong. It's changed a little bit because some of the older plastic, you almost have to educate the newer people about why they're rare. 141 gram black Jimmy, you have to tell them that there were 50 of them made, only 50 of them. So if you got one, whereas in the old days, you pull out a black Jimmy and everybody knew exactly what it was.
Right. And said, don't scratch it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Since you're mentioning history, it's not all plastic, as we know. I had this amazing privilege of growing up in a town that was right next to the Frisbee Pie Company. And so I remember Dan Buckley, the guy who really got me into Frisbee, because he let me play on the ultimate team, even though I was a complete dork and a little guy and dropped everything and couldn't make a good throw. But on Sundays, we'd go into Bridgeport, Connecticut and go to all the garage sales. And that was the time when you'd, whoa, look what we found. Look what we found. And, there was that time we found that pie box, which is now in your office, Danelle, yes?
Yes,
Yes.
still
Yeah.
is.
Mhm.
Smart move. Dan and June, there's another question here, which is it's a tricky one because most people in the sport will never be on our side of that. I remember being the guy like you were and I was, who was not only putting all the effort into organizing and making sure that the park permit was there and the radio station was there and the everything. And you're the guy selling the discs. And every once in a while, somebody would just kind of come up and go, you're really just doing this to make the money. You're really just the guy who's selling. You're just trying to make a profit here. And that always has landed for me like, ooh, you don't get it. But I remember having a little conversation with you about that. Talk about that a bit, Dan.
Oh, I've had, many people say that. And we ran at at one time when we just took over Discovering the World, we were running 24 golf tournaments a year. And one of them was the La Mirada Open. And the other one was the US Open, which is a $40,000 tournament. And we'd get 20,000 spectators over the weekend. And we'd have 260 competitors from around the world. And we had to get the fields to compete in 7 events. And, you know, at some point, you got to say we earned a little bit of it.
That was pretty humble. That was pretty humble. You know, what you didn't mention there is not only the public safety issues, but you've got to have the food, you've got to have the drink, you've got to have the bathrooms. And, you know, who's responsible? That all lands on the shoulder, but not of the guy who just walks along and go, I'll have the blue one. You know, you're just making too much money and walks away. So now that you're really a real business, do you find that people respect Discovering the World in a different way? Do you get a lot of accolades and appreciations?
Well, we get a lot of appreciations. They may, I don't know if they would give us accolades or not, but I mean, we do make money, and that's if we don't make money, we're not going to be able to open the doors. We're not going to be able to help a guy, you know, buy a disc that will. But we like to say that we provide the tools for you to enjoy the disc sports. And we hope we achieve that goal. We want you to enjoy the disc sports. And we don't hard sell people. We want to be information based also. So
Information, and I imagine education based.
Yes.
Like when you say we want to help you find the disc for you, I'm just looking at what's behind you guys. And, you know, sometimes I see what's available today. I visited John Kirkland in Seattle just a month ago, and the guy's living in a house, and there's all these discs. I'm looking around and they're, you know, most of them are golf.
Yes.
When you get it, you know, and how many are in your bag? Bag doesn't hold them all. I carry a cart now. I have to drive it because I have this warehouse of discs behind me, you know, each one for just the right throw. Gosh, back in our days, your Super Bowl blue or orange, that was the difference.
Yeah, that was it.
Well, we sent some of those discs to John.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did. I'll tell him you said hello. He'll watch this, I'm sure. What's that like when somebody comes in and you're trying to help them find the right disc? And in some cases, it's a complete novice. So you're looking at their size and their fitness and what do they want to play? And are they a beach person or more, I've got a kid I just want to play with? That's one. But given the way tournament level disc, given the way competitive level disc has flourished, for ultimate, you know, there's one certified disc you can use out there on the field, maybe 2, depending upon which country you're in. But for golf, how do you help somebody pick the right disc?
We use the dart method. We throw a dart at a disc, and then that's the one. No, we have our staff is pretty educated, and they're players, and they keep up to date on the latest discs.
We do have a great staff, and they'll ask them a few questions.
They can guide
budget,
them pretty good.
You know, what's your budget? How many discs do you want? You know, because driver mid-range putter, it's kind of a good start. Some people, they've played a couple times with their friends' discs and they have an idea of what they're looking for. And sometimes the friends have said, you should get this, this, and this. So sometimes they come in with an idea and sometimes no clue.
And I imagine sometimes people come in who are already deep in the sport. And, you know, they've got the 9 discs that they play with, but they're looking for that other one that's right in between. Yeah, Dannelle, tell us about that. I saw you smile and nod.
So asking them what they throw right now and how those are working for them, and then getting an idea of what they may want, you know, maybe a hole they feel is in their bag, and then making some recommendations that match that. And really, I mean, he touched on it. Sometimes people come in and think they need a whole bunch of discs. And we try to just be pretty realistic with them and what they actually might need. And then if they want to go beyond that, great, go for it. And I think that way they're more likely to come back. We want them to like feel really good about that. Was like something I kind of carried over from nonprofit world. Like if someone makes a donation, you want them to feel really good. You don't want them to feel like they just did something a little uncomfortable. And I think it's like the same in business. You want someone to feel really good about their experience here, and what they walked away with. And that's what's going to have them coming back because they feel really good about their experience.
You're not going to oversell somebody. You're not going
Yeah.
to. Yeah. You know, an
Doesn't
interesting
feel
thing
good.
about disc sports is if you're in golf or you're in tennis, you're burning through balls. All right. Golf balls don't last forever. Tennis balls, they lose their bounce. But you don't necessarily have a whole lot of rackets. And even if you do have a few, they last a while. Same thing with golf clubs. You know, yet flying discs, because that's the thing that's landing and hitting trees or whatever it is, you know, they're the ones that need to be replaced. So you've got a built-in ongoing recurring demand for your product, which is a great business model. The question I want to ask is, do you see people coming in sometimes who literally have like an emotional connection to a
Oh,
disc
yeah.
that has
All the time.
gone to end of life, and they just, you know, tell us about that, because that, you know, that wasn't around when I was involved in the sport with you.
They're in near tears when they lose their favorite disc.
Yeah. It's in the lake, it's up a tree, you know, and they're
cracked.
trying to, yeah, they're just, you know, they come in and tell us what they're looking for. And sometimes it's something that hasn't been made for 10 years. And now you're trying to find a replacement that's similar, or sometimes we have what they're looking for and they're overjoyed. So, it's kind of all over the place.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
When you can fill that niche for them, and they're very appreciative then. And then you've won them over for a long time once you do that.
And Dannelle, is that as much the case when somebody walks into the store and you can fully be with them as it is on mail order? You know, when somebody orders and you ship, do you ever get the message back that is that emotional, you know, thank you so much, I took it out, it's exactly what I was looking for?
Sometimes, but not as much. I mean,
there's ratings on, if you sell discs through Amazon or eBay, there's ratings, and it takes more effort for them to go back and give you a kudos
a review
on a rating
I
system.
mean, there's just not as much of a chance to connect with them on like what they're looking for and getting a good match for them.
But you deal Instagram people?
Yeah, so people
on Instagram
message. I mean, especially during COVID, you know, there was a lot of orders happening on the phone and through social media, since the storefront wasn't open. So, and I think people, you know, started to normalize like communicating with businesses that way even more and more, because they couldn't walk into it. So we still have some of that going on where we have regulars that we communicate with, you know, just through social media and help them. And we know, oh, this person, you know, only throws blue discs or things like that. And so we can help them find what they're looking for.
Joe Cahow only collecting green discs.
Yeah.
So, you know, COVID, you mentioned it again, was really epic for the world. But I remember reading the Wall Street Journal front page article about what happened to disc golf manufacturers, because the sport of disc golf is automatically outdoor and can be socially distanced. So it was safe. And you were the only one that was going to touch your disc. It's like the perfect sport to stay outdoors during a pandemic when you don't want to be touching or be too close to other people. And the problem was that all the global supply chains got mixed up and they couldn't get the plastic they needed to keep manufacturing the disc. So during that time, the demand must have surged, and yet inventory supply wasn't always available. What was that like from a business standpoint, June?
Oh gosh, our warehouse was practically empty at certain times during this.
And what was going on for us was our custom imprinting went to zilch, nothing, because there was no promotions going on. You know,
stores were closed.
Stores were closed.
No public, no events were happening.
No
where
events.
People could,
Exactly.
And then our Amazon orders and our online orders went crazy. And then the problem was the manufacturers were having problems getting material. Some of it probably was that the material was being used for syringes for COVID, and they couldn't get material. And then it's reversing now. And at the end of that, they were requiring us to make orders, what was it, 6 months in advance of what we thought we were going to need. So you ended up over ordering, because how could you tell how many discs you're going to sell of a particular model that was obsolete 3 months ago? And then we had a lot of inventory. So our inventory went real high. And now things are starting to get back to normal and equilibrium. The vendor or the disc manufacturers are getting back to normal, and they doesn't take 6 months to get you your order. So it's kind of evening out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was wild. I mean, I'd be waking up at like 3 in the morning because a manufacturer would drop their discs at that time. And so by 3:05, they had sold out of everything that they had available for that drop.
Right, because you were at that
So
point. Now, the way discs retail happens, there's other retail stores all
Yeah.
over the country that didn't exist back in the early days. You had to go to the
Yeah.
tournament or get the catalog. And so now when you say they drop, in other words, it's like they open the concert ticket sales and it's sold out.
yeah,
Correct.
You
exactly.
got to be
Yep.
there to place your order. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was a lot of the manufacturers at that time.
So it was either we would know when the drops were and they would be at crazy times, or I mean, for the longest time, it would just be like you're out trying to get your hair cut, and all of a sudden, someone drops something, and we're all texting like, who could place
Yeah,
this order? And we're trying to
I
do it on our
I gotta
phone.
tell you, I don't have a lot of experience with that particular example, but so this points to something interesting, because what would make the drop moment so intense is that the other stores were also trying to order. Yeah.
Yes.
So there must be a community of flying disc retail businesses. You guys all
Yeah,
know each
well,
other? Is there a sense of like,
no, I mean,
or are you a collegial community?
there's a lot of disc golf companies.
Okay.
And some of them are brick and mortars, have a location. A lot of them are just online. And whether they have like a large facility or it's someone like selling out of their house or things like that, especially with COVID and the growth of the sport, there's been, more and more and more kind of people starting their own businesses, since it's like can be fairly easy-ish, to launch a site and things like that. But as far as, businesses that sell a variety, things for all disc sports, there's only a handful, and most of them have been around for a couple decades.
Yeah, like Bill Wright up in
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right Lines.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta
They
go, gotta
throw,
throw.
and they order like
Gotta
their
go,
Frisbee
gotta
brand.
throw. Is that
Yeah.
Bill's? Yeah, that's cute.
No,
No.
no,
No.
it's
you.
another company that sells every,
Okay, got it. So there is a small community of very mature flying disc retail businesses, and you guys all know each other.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the challenging thing for us was when those drops came,
Yeah.
that you were allotted so many discs. It didn't matter if you're selling out of your car or if you had a big brick and mortar, you're going to get 25. And we had a lot of customers that wanted this product. So we had to disappoint a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there was no allocation for that from the manufacturers.
Well,
And
dependent on the manufacturer.
Dependent on the
Yeah.
manufacturers.
Okay.
Some
So
of the
the whole
manufacturers.
industry evolved in terms of maturity and balancing and tracking and projecting and investing and at sometimes
so.
being out of stock.
Yeah,
And now some of the problem is that the manufacturers are selling direct, so that undercuts us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically, I mean, it was starting to go in that direction probably anyways, but when you only have so much plastic and you can sell something,
At retail
At
pricing.
retail.
Right.
exactly.
Rather than
Yeah.
a wholesale to discovering
Yeah.
the world, and they get
What are
wholesale.
you going to do?
Get it.
Which,
I mean, they're running a small business too.
exactly. Yeah, and
Well,
we
they're
had
a lot
to,
bigger now.
yeah, We-
Okay.
we
So
had
there's
to make
something. Sorry, go ahead.
we would make those same decisions of, and always trying to prioritize as far as disc golf goes, like our in-store sales. So they were always our priority customers, trying to keep as much inventory for them as possible. And then,
Nice.
our other avenues as well.
Nice. Have you had people come from all over the world to come to Discovering the World? To come
All
to
the
the
time.
physical building, to walk in and say, I'm here, I'm here. I made it, and then spend time there. Has that happened? And how long do they tend to stay?
They've come in and they've just gotten off the airplane and they
Yeah.
come right here.
Yeah.
From
being in
LAX.
Southern- Yeah,
LAX,
being
yep.
where we are, Southern California and close to Disneyland. We definitely get, quite a few people that are in the area for something else and want to make sure that they come by. A couple times a year, we open up the warehouse, so people can shop in the back.
Wow.
Which
that's
then
Crazy.
it's a popular event.
people,
Oh my gosh. How do you, I don't even want to know how you manage that. Okay, go ahead.
yeah.
It's
So,
fun. It's fun. And many times we'll give them a discount for those kind of days. And we're quite busy. But I like to look at it as it's kind of giving them an opportunity to buy something at a discount and they have the selection of the place anyways, but they get back and touchy-feely things and they love it. They love
Yeah, I
it.
mean, it's a different experience to go and see the metal racks. I know that's what they're really coming to see.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, the international customers, sometimes they're just like, they don't see the product that we have in their home country sometimes. We've had people buy a lot and have us ship it because they don't have room in their luggage to take everything back they want to take. They're
June,
calling people
that
back
was the
home.
beginning of the whole business.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of the whole business, was the fact that there were discs here that you couldn't get there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Carrie, you've had people calling home to say, how many do you want?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
showing
all the
face,
time.
like
People
FaceTime,
FaceTime now.
showing
while they're
colors
here.
and what we have in stock. And I mean, even people local, but I mean, international customers calling their friends. I'm here. What do you need?
Right.
So
sweet. We're coming to a wrap up here. I've got some closing questions. Okay. Dannelle, I'm going to steer these mostly to your parents because they were the ones who took the risk. They're the ones who, should we do this? They're the ones who gave it the ability to grow to where it is that you could come in and take it to a whole other level. Because Instagramming and websiting and it just wouldn't have been the thing. We took at our level. You've taken it far, far beyond, and may you continue to flourish and grow for many, many years to come. Dannelle, Dan, June, what do you feel about having, you took the risk, you talked about that at the beginning, but having grown the business to where it was at the point when you were able to hand it over to Danelle to run and continue to grow?
surreal.
I mean, it's decades. Decades.
It's from him selling out of the trunk of his car to where we are now. I mean, you would have never imagined it to come this far and have this many people love this sport. It's just amazing. And I don't, what else do you have?
Well, let me say something there. So many people love the sport. And what I've noticed is, honestly, and love you for having done that. Because they know their love of the sport is hugely enabled by the fact that what you've done with your lives has been there to help them discover, improve, flourish, suffer a little bit if it goes in the lake, and you're there with them. Danny?
I feel grateful. I mean, I feel grateful to you for making the phone call. I feel grateful to be alive, making it through my health crises. I now play disc golf and ride a bike and walk every day and occasionally come in here if we have any issues. But I really feel grateful. And I feel grateful for our customers too. So
nice. Thank you. So last opportunity here. What message would you like to share with the Flying Disc community who will be watching this recording for years to come?
Oh
Start
dear.
with you, Danelle. Start with you, Danelle.
Um, well, if they're already in the community, hoping that they've just found the joy that we found in it, through like meeting other people and just the physical activity that the sport brings to your lives. So I hope for that. And if they're not in the community, I think just the opportunity they have to experience something really special.
And you're sitting there saying, come on over, I'll help you pick your first discs.
Yeah, definitely.
Mom, what do you want to say to the future?
We hope that you can enjoy the sport, that there aren't other obstacles that get in the way of it. California has issues with having enough land to have courses. There's always competitive things trying to use the land. But there's plenty of other places where it's just growing like crazy. And I just hope it continues to grow. I hope it's got a good base. Oak Grove is going to be celebrating Oak Grove course, the first golf course is going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary next year. And they're planning a big celebration. So, and what's it going to look like in another 50 years?
Yeah.
Who knows? And hope it's bigger. I don't see how it can get much better, but yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm grateful, and I hope people can enjoy the sport, or just the recreation of a flying disc. And if you need some help with that, come by. We'll try to help you along. That's about it.
Well, then I'll wrap up by saying, you showed me something, Mangone family, early on. I remember visiting in La Mirada, and Dan pulled out his spreadsheets. And, the business, I did it by the seat of my pants.
He still keeps spreadsheets.
And I remember looking at him going, really? You do that? And so there was no way that I could have taken the business really any further than I did. And the sense of appreciation, friendship that I have for your family, because you not just took the call, it's kind of go, okay, Ron's got to pass this baby on to somebody, and he's asking, oh, you caught this thing, and you've cared for it. You've cared for it in a way that's allowed not only discovering the world to flourish and the sport to flourish, but people's enjoyment of life to flourish. I'm delighted that the business continues to flourish. And I just want to say thank you for the contribution to the world that your family has made that allows all of us to continue to enjoy discovering the world.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. We value your friendship and your knowledge of the world.
Okay, everybody who's been watching this, that's Dan, June, and Danelle Mangone, and you know what to do next. Go find them online. It's dtworld.com. I understand there's a warehouse special coming up. You can get a discount. If you're in the neighborhood, swing by. They'll help you find just the right disc.
We need you as our spokesperson here.
Forever, June, including this video. All right, bye-bye, guys. Mwah.
Okay,
Bye.
thanks so much. Bye-bye.